On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, is there a trade to be made between the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1144 of Locked On Canadiens. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing on YouTube or wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Doing so supports the show and make sure you don't miss an episode, which is incredibly important because this week we have gone back to 5 episodes a week. So you won't want to miss out on any of this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeIt'sIan, and I'm joined by the incomparable Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, we're headed into another weekend with a mailbag. How are things?
Things are great. I forgot to mention on our last episode that I will start watching the Crave, the build show, the rebuild show. I called it the build.
Yeah, that's copyrighted. You can't.
I can't do it.
That show got canceled.
Mm-hmm. It's not canceled. It's just in hiatus. It's indefinite hiatus.
Yeah.
I did say I was going to watch the rebuild and we were going to do reviews. However, we have not yet ascertained where in the US you can watch it. So I will be holding off for a couple of days until we determine whether or not you guys can. And then it'll be, Laura tells Ian about it, trying not to spoil major parts. Okay.
Yeah, I just try to do it from memory. Just try to do a shot-for-shot retelling of it from memory. I think that's really good. Just great podcasting. I'm sure people will love that.
But yeah, no, we'll definitely talk about it, and if we learn anything from it. But it's just that our listeners asked, do you know where outside of Canada you can watch it? Obviously, in Canada you can watch it on Crave, but I'm gonna try my best. I've been I've had an alert set up, a Google alert set up, and I've been scouring Reddit and Twitter every day to see if there's a way for you guys to watch it.
Yeah. And so my apologies, and this will be the only time I apologize for being a filthy American on this show, but such is the way it goes. We have a lot coming up on today's episode. It's obviously a Friday, which means it is a mailbag. You guys came through as you always do. Wide range of topics, how many starts each goalie should get, where's the best place for a new fan to sit at the Bell Center. One of my personal favorites are former players' haters. But I think where I want to start with on this one is goaltending. I know I mentioned it earlier on this week. Jeff the Red asks, what's your early expectation on the division of starts among the goalies this year? So for, the first time in 2 years, we're starting with just 2. It is Sam Montembeault and Caden Primo. Laura, how does the math work out for you?
Caden Primo plays 30, which would leave Samuel Montembeault with 52. Not, 80 games like Carey Price used to play, and not an even split yet.
Yeah, I think that's entirely reasonable, especially if Caden Primo plays to the level we think he can. Mm-hmm. I think that would be the most starts he's had in his career in a season.
Yes.
It would be tough Yeah, I was going to say there's no way he's done more, just given the state of not only his play, but the number of goalies that have been ahead of him throughout his time in Montreal.
Yeah, and for me, I want to dramatically increase the number of games he plays. That's my intention with answering the question this way. Also, if you're going to treat them like a 1A, 1B scenario, you have to increase the number of games he plays. I know Samuel Montembeault likes consistency, but we already saw last year, even with 3 goalies, they ran the risk of overplaying him. So for me, I want him to be able to get rest, find a way to get consistency, but give Caden Primo a lot of starts. And give Samuel Montembeault the clear signifier that he's the 1A in this tandem. Yep.
There should be no reason, if they're both healthy, for either one of these guys to play a back-to-back. That can't happen. They need to keep Sam Montembeault fresh. This is the way to do it. Well, I think 52-30 is spot on. So we'll see how that plays out over the course of the year. Sticking with Jeff the Red, which Habs player is most likely to suddenly appear and cause mischief? If you say his name 3 times, a la Beetlejuice, I will be refraining from saying that name anymore, just because we are getting closer to 3, and I don't want him to appear in my house. Laura, who do you think is appearing behind you when you say his name 3 times?
Arbor Jacka.
That's a good answer. That's a scary answer.
I know, because the right answer is obviously Brendan Gallagher. He's the mischief, right? But I'm trying to think of somebody who would like enjoy and like be impish about it a little bit. Like it's a little bit funny, and it's definitely we're getting close to Arbor Jackeye.
I think Michael Pezzetta is a sneaky good answer here.
Ooh, that's a
I
great
think I think Pez would just show up behind you, all of the hair, and I
answer.
think that he's kind of got a little bit of that personality. I know the one of the things that people have seen from the documentary, the rebuild show, is that he asked if anybody wanted to play on the power play in practice, and Pezzetta volunteered, and Marty said no. So
It's so simple. No.
yeah, anybody else, like that's basically what happened. I really like Mike Pezzetta here. His clips during the golf tournament where they showed him his picture of him as a youth wearing the most middle school outfit you've ever seen in your life. I really love the personality that Michael Pezzetta is, and I think he could be that guy that appears behind you when you say his name 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. You mentioned Gallagher. Paul Giardetti asks, Gallagher said at the rookie camp that only 2 or 3 of the guys in the room will eventually make the team. I think at least 4, if not 6. But if you had to pick 3, who are they? I think when Gallagher said that only 2 or 3 of them will make the team, I kind of think he was talking about this season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was looking at that room and going, most of you aren't NHLers, because that's kind of a bummer thing to say before they're about to skate at the Bell Center.
Yeah. I definitely think it was just this season.
Yeah, and I think we've been pretty clear about the 3 that we think have the best shot. It's Lane Hudson, it's Logan Mailloux, and it's Owen Beck.
Yeah.
If it's anybody outside of those 3, I cannot wait to see what kind of camp they put together for us to be talking about them. Like if we're here next week talking about how great Charles Savoie was, like that's
Or
super
like
exciting.
Sean Farrell.
Yeah, Sean Farrell. Like that's a perfect example of a guy who, if he blows it out of the water in camp, like we're talking about that for months probably.
Yeah. I also think like Philip Bashar would be fantastic, but I think even if he has an amazing camp, the right thing to do is still put him in the AHL this year.
Yep. Completely agreed.
Yeah.
Dan Standish asks, do you think the Leafs and Habs will entertain a trade involving Justin Barron being sent to the Toronto Maple Leafs for Nick Robertson? Moving Barron will allow Mailloux and Struble to earn a spot in the lineup. Your thoughts?
Okay. So I like my feelings about Nick Robertson are that Leafs fans kept preaching to us that Cole Caulfield was not as good as he is. So I think that's been disproven. But I think it would be really funny if the Montreal Canadiens traded for Nick Robertson, and then Nick Robertson here attained the potential that Leafs fans thought he had, but here. That would be really funny. So I'm all for this trade. I also think that Justin Barron doesn't dramatically improve their defense. He's depth for them, for sure. I don't believe in their defense. So I think that would be a trade that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if the Leafs are willing to part with Nick Robertson for just Justin Barron.
Yeah. And these general managers will say it's a business, they'll trade with anybody. I'm going to call them liars. They're lying to our faces. Remember when Thomas Plekanec got traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it was one of the weirdest things any of us ever experienced with this hockey team? Yeah. There's a reason it was weird, is that it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
I think just last season, or maybe the season before, the Rangers and the Devils, or the Rangers and the Islanders, created their first trade amongst each other. Like, these guys hate trading with one another. It's not something that they want to do all that often. Yeah. So that definitely plays into it. And I as low as I am on Justin Barron, I kind of think the ceiling is higher there than it is for Nick Robertson, who we just haven't seen all that much of.
Right. And it's also like a matter of like, does Toronto overvalue Nick Robertson and what he could potentially bring? So there's that question as well. I just think it would be really funny, but also like Ian, we had heard, I don't know if we've ever mentioned this on the show, we'd heard that after the Habs, after it was 3-1, like the Leafs brass was like, you are never helping Montreal in any way ever again.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, that tracks.
Yeah. Yeah. So, even if let's say, what's his face, Brad Treliving wanted to make a trade, like, it would get vetoed.
Yeah. And that's honestly, like, it's not surprising.
And our information is from a reliable source too.
Oh yeah, I'm not. I think that that's mine is from my own brain, and I don't think that that's
Yeah.
out of the realm of possibilities. I think these guys despise each other. That as
Yeah.
just a a a job requirement. Quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. 100%.
Cool. All right. Up next, we are going to wonder if former players become haters once they leave the game, and we're going to get into that in just a second. I love being in the middle of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying the night at a ballpark. It's just more fun being there. I've mentioned this before, but last summer I got to see Shohei Ohtani up close and personal. It's something I will never forget. The place where you can go to get to the games that you want to see is Gametime. We're big fans of Gametime here thanks to their all-in pricing. This is a setting in the app that you can toggle on. So Gametime tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in. No hidden fees. Plus, with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal for your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we are back. Before we jump back in, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Boondoggle gets us started in the middle frame here. Is Georges Laraque a hater? He seems to have taken the view of Habs can't do anything right. He is stuck in a bygone age of hockey, so why would anybody listen to his takes on Reinbacher's performance in 2 meaningless rookie showcase games? I think we have a similar thought process on this one, Laura, so I'll let you kick this one off.
I think Georges Laraque isn't a hater. I think Georges Laraque is a media personality who's trying to stay employed.
Correct.
I think there is a huge market for hot takes, especially in this market, in any sports market, but particularly in this market. So I think that's what he's doing. I don't necessarily think that, I don't think he's outright lying or anything like that, but he's creating conversation points. He's saying things that are going to get him listened to and noticed. And, it's possible that he might not have liked Reinbacher's game that much. And a lot of times the hockey watching is subjective. Like Ian and I watched the exact same game the other day. I was literally there in person and we took away some very different things on certain players. So, there is a subjective element, but I do think that a lot of times when Georges Laraque says something, people get annoyed by it. And you have to kind of think about why it's very often something he says that make people upset.
Yeah. No, I think, this idea that, well, he's a former player and he's so, now he's a hater. There's a lot of media personalities out there who are not former players, who are definitely people I would put in the hater category. His perspective is that of a former NHLer. He's going to tell you how things were when he played, the guys that he played with, things that, remind him of his days. And I think that's just his perspective. I hate, I look, I just got here. I'm not trying to start picking fights with people in the media here, because I genuinely think that most of them do not have ill intentions. They have a job to do, and the job is to inform, and the job is to entertain. And I think in moments where he is, or anybody, I won't even just say George, where people are making hot takes, they are trying to be entertaining. That's the long and short of it. There's too much stuff out there for you to listen to things that bother you, to read things that bother you, to engage with content that you do not vibe with. Except us. You should be listening to us all the time.
Yes. Whether or not you vibe with us, because we'll have a different take the next day. we have 5 episodes a week, people. You'll find something you like.
Yeah, and again, the point of this, being about the Reinbacher's performance in those 2 meaningless rookie showcase games, I've been barking up this tree the entire time we've talked about these, is that we don't know how to consume these games because they don't mean anything, and yet they're the only thing we've seen in months. So it's the only thing we have to go by. So the hot takes are flying off of those 2 rookie showcase games. So, some level-headedness here, as always. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. I think that's the reality here that we live in with media personalities, former player or otherwise. Moving on, we're sticking on a question on David Reinbacher. Yassine Merzouk asks, is David Reinbacher the modern Patrice Brisebois? I've read this a bunch of times, and every time I've said Patrice Bergeron, and I
No,
can't
it's not.
not do it.
He's
both
not.
He's not. Both are 6'3", 205, both smooth skaters, both won a championship in a lower league at age 17, both played in Cloton, and no matter what they do, Habs fans will never think they are good enough. What do you think about that?
So they play different roles, right? I do get the similarities, but the expectations from Reinbach are very different from the expectations for Patrice Brisebois. I also almost did it like
I did that to you. That's my fault. That's me yawning and then making you yawn. That's what that is.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Now I am going to yawn because you said that. And then it'll turn into a vicious cycle. All right. So I think for me, like, Brisebois was much more offensive, and defensively he was very, very, very much maligned. I remember the memes. I remember, like, he was a meme before there were memes. And like David Reinbacher doesn't have that same expectation, and I think we're also a lot more educated now on what the modern NHL looks like, because we would see Patrice Brisebois, almost called him Bergeron, make a mistake, and then that would have been an untrue statement, because Patrice Bergeron has never made a mistake in his entire life except signing with the Bruins. And so we would see Brisebois make a mistake, and we would be like, why can't you be that good defenseman? But then we would like neglect, we just talked about how many goals he scored on the power play in our trivia that we do at the end of every episode. And so like I think we just had a different understanding of what he was supposed to bring. And we had different expectations. With Reinbacher, I think I would like to think that we are much more evolved as hockey fans. We're much more knowledgeable now. It's a little bit less goes on gut, and it goes a little bit more on each player is very segmented in what they're supposed to do and what their role is supposed to be. But I do get those similarities, and I really hope it doesn't happen, because he seems like such a nice kid.
Yeah. I think the comparison there is actually kind of uncanny. They're the same height and weight. They both played in Cloton. Like, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I think where this differs is with Brisebois, we have the benefit of hindsight. And with Reinbacher, his entire career is in front of him. So like the idea that, we will never be pleased with what he does. If he wins a Norris, I find it hard to believe that we'll still be upset with him, right?
Yeah.
If he's a regular 55 to 60 point defenseman who plays 21, 22 minutes a night, I don't think we're disappointed by that outcome.
No.
I think we are prisoners of the moment when it comes to David Reinbacher, unfortunately, right now. And we need the benefit of hindsight with him to be able to judge him fairly. And I don't think we have that right now, because he is 19 years old. So everybody, deep breath. He's 19 years old. Okay. Moving on. We have a returner here in Jordan Roberts. If you remember, we talked with him about his wedding to a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. And he had said that he wanted his now wife to wear Canadiens merch. And we posed the question to him. Is that a first for a mailbag where we ask somebody else a question?
No, I did a reverse mailbag once where all of it was questions for the listeners. I literally did half an hour of questions for the listeners.
That's so good. Well, we asked Jordan, would you wear a Leafs jersey for your wife? To which, when we asked him that, he responded and quoted Meatloaf by saying, I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. So, Jordan, that is an interesting battle you have chosen. I wish you luck.
I'm just going to go around and say it. Your wife loves you more than you love your wife.
I mean, whom among us? You know
I
what
just
I mean?
dropped a bomb in someone's marriage. Let's go on with the mailbag.
They just got married, Laura. Earlier this week, it was the Ottawa's going to make the playoffs thing, and now it's this.
Just throwing grenades everywhere.
What 3 players do you think have a hot start to the season, and what players are you giving a little more runway to? We ended up answering this a little bit on the Thursday episode, so tune back into that one. But I mean, just quickly, maybe give one of each. Someone that's going to get off to a hot start, and someone that might be a little slow to the uptake.
So hot start wise, oh my God, we had Alex Newhook. Yes. Let's go with Alex Newhook.
Yeah, I like that one.
And then the other one is, I don't know, take your pick, Christian Dvorak or Josh
Yeah.
Anderson.
Well, and we're kind of expecting a slow start from Kirby Dach, right? The Canadians are definitely tempering expectations there because he hasn't played a meaningful hockey game in about a year. So,
Literally, yeah.
there are circumstances that exist that provide us with that context of who we think is going to, or who we expect to get off to a hot start and who we kind of expect to be a little slow out of the gate. If Doc is slow out of the gate, that's why.
Mhm.
New Hook last year, he struggled because Doc went down to injury. Then he had a high ankle sprain, and then he came back and he was the fastest forward on the team. So
Yeah.
I think like he's a guy that I think can quite literally get off to a quick start because he's quite fast. But I think he can capitalize on some of that momentum from the end of last season. All right, we're headed into our last segment, and we're going to talk about how to take in a game at the Bell Center as a new fan, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday out of market afternoon game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit fanduel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, last segment. We've got a couple more questions, then we have to get into our trivia. Let's start off with Randy Hansen. In honor of Lawyer getting a new car, what is your dream vehicle if money was not a factor?
That's a really great question because I honestly, I'm not that much of a car person. Don't get me wrong, I love my new car. But I've always wanted to drive an Audi, like just is it a TT? Do they still call it that?
Sure, I have no
That's what
idea.
I've always wanted. So it's a little sports car. It's an Audi. I've always wanted to drive one. I just that's out of my price range.
Yeah,
So any Audi, not just that one. So
sure.
yeah.
When mine's a bit of a sentimental pick. When I was a little kid, we drove around. My grandmother would drive us around in her old Volvo 240, a 1988 Volvo 240. I loved that car.
My
When
grandpa
we were
had one
little
of those.
kids, yeah, when we were little kids, my grandmother used to tell us, "This is your car when you turn 16." And sure enough, on our 16th birthday, she rolled it up and put it on our lawn.
Yeah.
It sat there for a while. We fixed it up. I got it on the road. Um, I would get that car again in much better shape. I would want like a souped up version of it. It's
Mhm.
just a classic look. Like I'm not a big gearhead. But that car is sentimental to me, but also like I just think it's old Volvos are sweet rides. I really, really enjoyed driving that car.
Did it have
Uh,
like the seat that was like the seat back that was like it looks like a little grill?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was awesome. Crank windows,
Yeah,
the works. It was
the
great.
whole thing.
Another one from Randy Hansen. You get the chance to create a special event jersey for the Montreal Canadiens. What special event do you choose?
There's so much possibility out there. I would like a gaudy Halloween jersey. Like straight up pumpkin. Like
Ooh,
you turn the CH into a pumpkin and then like the eyes and stuff. That's what I want. And
yeah,
like
that's
purple
really
and
good.
orange.
Yeah, I think I just take that one. Honestly, I can't think of one off the top of my head. I think a Halloween one would be so cool. It'd be so
Yeah,
like gaudy and tacky, and it would
yeah.
be awesome.
No, it has to be ugly. Like that's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. It has to look like Spirit Halloween. I don't know.
Yes,
Do you guys have those in Canada?
yes,
Spirit
we do.
Halloween?
Yeah.
Do they take over grocery stores that have been
Yeah.
removed? Yeah.
There's like a random place that like nobody and then you like like 2 months of a year, there's a Spirit Halloween there, yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny, man. I don't know how they stay in business. Anyway, last one from Randy Hansen. Do you think it's time the NHL allows teams to choose what they wear for home games? Back in the day, it used to be white at home, your darker jersey on the road. That has since flipped. I think since the '06 lockout, it's been that way. What are your thoughts on this? I know a lot of people are pretty, ready to fight for the white home jersey, but like, what do you think?
Like I feel like they should agree. So like if I'm playing the Devils, like we should agree. Like I'm doing whites, you're doing reds, whatever game it
Yep.
is, and whether it's home or not.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, it happens from time to time anyway,
Yeah,
where a team will come in and maybe a home team, their alternate jersey is white.
yeah,
They'll, like Montreal's worn red on Toronto ice before, in recent memory, because one of the Toronto Maple Leafs alternates was a white uniform.
Yeah.
I generally think that the darker uniforms are the nicer looking uniforms. And selfishly, I'm a slob, so if I wear anything white, it is ruined. So all of my white hockey jerseys are now off-white hockey jerseys. So that's just a little bit about me. That's I understand that's my hang up, that's my problem, but that's why the darker jerseys get my vote.
But the darker jerseys are generally, for most teams, the more beautiful one.
Yeah, I mean, look, the road Canadiens jersey is beautiful. Nothing tops that home jersey. Like
Yeah.
it's perfection in a uniform.
Exactly.
All right. Last question from Max Riche. Greetings from rainy Singapore. I haven't been to the Bell Center for a game in about 25 years, partly because I left Montreal 23 years ago, and because every time I've been back, there was no hockey, such as the 04 lockout, the 2012 late start, or the wrong time of the year. But I'll be going back this December and looking at either the Buffalo game or the Detroit game. I'll be bringing my 2 teenage girls who have never been to a hockey game, and combined, they're almost as giddy as me. On TV, there are things we rarely see, like line changes and such. So my question is, should we sit facing the bench or facing the penalty box? I want to get a real feel of the coaching and the interaction between the players. What do you think? By the way, the last time I went, Koivu was not yet captain. Is he still there? What else happened? How many cups have they won since then? I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. So we're going to ignore that last part for the protection of our listener.
Yes, but you want to know about the 2021 Canadiens Leafs series. Like that's, if you're going to catch up on something, that's the one you want to catch up on, Max. All right. So if you are going to be, okay, so this is the thing. Like I'm assuming when you're saying like facing the penalty box or facing the bench, you want to be in the lower bowl. You want to be like on the side where the penalty box, like you're facing the penalty box and the benches are in front of you. Because I think that's the greatest vantage point. You get to see a lot of interaction, but you don't want to be too close because you also want to be able to see the entire bench as well as the bench of your opponent. If you're having trouble deciding between those two games, my advice would be go with Detroit because something stupid always happens against Buffalo. With Detroit, something stupid might happen, but there's just a little bit less of a risk there. But if you are sitting in the middle, so like directly behind one of the benches, then you'll be able to get the vantage point for the penalty boxes and stuff as well. But if like you can still see the bench if you're low enough, like behind the penalty boxes, it's just like, to me, like I always find there's a lot more value on sitting on that side, just because like you want to be almost close enough that you can smell the hockey stank, but not close enough so you can smell that you can smell the hockey stank, because you want to be seeing all the ice.
Yeah.
So that's my advice.
Yeah, and I love that. Personally, like one of the angles I love the most is sitting somewhat high up and behind one of the nets, because you can see the play develop in front of you, right? It develops either towards you or away from you. And I think as an early hockey fan, that would have been really cool to see, because, if you're sitting, towards center ice, you're getting essentially the feed that the broadcast does, right? Like you're getting what you could see on TV. To sit like in the corner is an angle that they don't show much on TV. So you're getting quite literally a different angle of the game. But it's a really cool thing that you're taking your 2 daughters to go see this game. Anywhere you guys sit, it'll be a great game. Have fun. Have a hot dog for us. All right. We have to get into our trivia. Last episode, we asked a question. This former Montreal Canadien is one of only 4 players to ever play at least 600 games in the AHL and 600 games in the NHL. Laura, do you want one last guess at this before I reveal our answer?
No, because I couldn't think of it. Like I kept thinking about Thomas Plekanec, but he did not spend 600 games in the AHL.
You have the wrong Thomas. You were pretty close. The 4 players are Dave Creighton, Keith Aucoin, Sean Thornton, and Tom Kostopoulos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He played 600 games in the NHL?
Yeah, I think that's an incredible stat and like a show of these guys' fortitude. Like, they played 1,200 games in the 2 best hockey leagues in the world, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really cool. It's kind of a neat stat that only 4 guys have done it.
Yeah.
Sean Thornton, we can forget about that one though. I don't really like to think about him all that much. All right, our next trivia question, which will be answered next week. How many numbers have only been worn by one player in Montreal Canadiens history? So in the history of the team, there are a certain number of jersey numbers that have only been worn by one player. I'm not asking for the jersey number or who wore them, just how many of those numbers exist. Can you guys tell I go to Hockey Reference to make these? Because the sweater number registry there is truly excellent.
Yeah. And also keep in mind that a number might be retired, but two players or multiple players might have won it before it got retired.
Correct. I'll give you a little hint. None of them are retired numbers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I thought for sure it would be a retired number.
No, I mean, a lot of those ended up getting worn a couple times. So, yep, there's only a few of them. I almost said the number. You almost goaded me into saying the answer and completely ruining the bit.
No, you would have just edited it.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys have trivia questions that you'd like to try to stump your fellow fan with, please send them in, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, or you can send it to us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens. That's going to do it for us on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thanks so much for tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head over to Locked On NHL to see what else is going on around the league. As a reminder, we are free and available everywhere you get podcasts, including YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to Locked On Canadiens so you don't miss an episode. You can follow the show on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens. We're also on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com for our email. And you can find Laura at The Active Stick. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week.